We just played our final 8 games of 11-man football in the state of Michigan, our final high school games. We got 8 state champs. That's a wrap on the season. We're going to break it down. How did the state finals go? Were there any upsets? Did the computer model have a historic run? We're going to jump into it. Let's go.
Yeah. Appreciate you guys tuning in. This is kind of a first for us, postseason kind of recap episode. We got some cool little tidbits for you. It's exciting, but make sure you subscribe to this, to our newsletter. Follow us on our socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We'll keep stuff coming this off season, and we'll we'll definitely fulfill our promise about 300 subs here in the next couple of weeks. So appreciate all of you guys, and let's have a good episode.
All right. Well, before we get into any of that, we got to talk about our sponsor, Team Fi. Team Fi is our only sponsor. Team Fi is also Doak and I's company. Team Fi does free digital fundraisers for your team. We've helped a lot of the state's football teams out, a lot of the state's general teams. Schools from across the state use our products. We've got a couple of different ones. They're all fun. They're all easy. They're all digital. And most importantly, they're all free, meaning Team Fi takes nothing out of what you raise and charges you nothing for running a fundraiser. So check out our website, www.teamfi.works. You can see how our fundraisers work. And if you're in desperate need of some cash, we can get you started today. So again, www.teamfi.works. Check out one of our fundraising products. I would love to meet with you and show you how easy we can make things on you. All right. Let's get to our show, guys. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter show today. We just simply only have 8 games to talk about, and we kind of want to spread our content out to kind of make it last because we don't have a ton of topics left this season to talk about. So what we're going to jump into first is just the games themselves. We had 8 state title games over the last few days. We're coming at you now from Tuesday morning. Doak, let's jump into it here. We'll start with upsets as we always do. And guess what? There weren't that many of them. There were 2 upsets out of 8 games. Computer model picks at 75%. And really one of the upsets, our second upset, was not really a real upset per se because we called it a pick'em game. We had Pontiac Notre Dame Prep by 0.05 of a point over West Catholic. So West Catholic was a slight underdog. You cannot score 0.05 points in a game and they win. That's one of our dogs to win. Dearborn Divine Child is your other upset. They were only a 5-point dog. So again, nothing crazy. Dearborn Divine Child beats Unity Christian 23-22 and actually the state's best game, state's best final game. Divine Child wins their first championship in 40 years as a 5-point dog there. So 2 upsets. Every other favorite one going into the game. Harbor Beach, Lumen Christi, Detroit Catholic Central, DeWitt, Orchard Lake St. Mary's, and Abity. We're going to go through all the games here, but Doak, reactions to just at a high level, not on any specific game, just having so many favorites win.
Yeah, it's surprising. We definitely haven't had this historically. But, I'm not too shocked, I guess. There was some lopsided matchups in there per the model. So some matchups had bigger spreads than I expected, but not too crazy per the model, but the fact that there was some big spreads in the finals was surprising.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's jump into the games themselves. We're going to start in D8. D8 was maybe our best game. We had 2 13-0 teams, number 1 and number 2 all year long. Harbor Beach and Hudson, we talked at length about how they were destined to meet up in the finals, and they did. We had Hudson as the favorite in the bracket, just the way things shook out. Harbor Beach had to go through Beale City, but Harbor Beach as the favorite in the game. When they played, they're only favorited by 1. They win by 11. Actually ended up being one of the state's better final games. Their I'll kind of fast forward. There weren't a lot of great games the last two weeks. Harbor Beach wins 31-20. So commentary on the Pirates of Harbor Beach
Yeah,
winning against the
yeah.
Tigers.
I mean, they just started fast. Scored, got the ball back on a turnover, scored, and then got a stop, scored again. So they were up 21-0 before Hudson really settled into the game. And then, Hudson started moving the ball. Got a 2-for-1, around halftime. So they scored 1.5, came out and scored, got the ball, scored again. So it was a little bit of a game there for a second, but Hudson Harbor Beach was they were just not going to be denied. They moved the ball pretty smooth all game and just chewed the clock, and it was just too much for Hudson. Yeah, it was a good game, but Hudson never really had a shot after they went down 21-0.
Well, congrats to the Pirates. They're one of our few survivors on Survivor Island. We'll kind of wrap that at the end of this segment. 14-0, incredibly hard to do. One piece of content we're going to give you here is, where would Harbor Beach rate among your 8 state finalists? Are they, they're D8. Are they the 8th of 8 state finalists? What would the spread be, right? I'll give you a little sneak peek. They are not the worst. They're not rated the lowest of our 8 state champs. So stay tuned for that piece of content. I always think that's kind of interesting. All right, let's move on to D7. D7, we had some history here. D7 was your worst game going into the week. Menominee was a 19-point favorite over Schoolcraft. Menominee also, being the favorite, had the chance to take back an 11-man state title to the UP for the first time in 11 years, I want to say. I think it was 2015 was the last time this happened. It was an Ishpeming team. Also, maybe in D7, might have been D8. But so that they kind of had a streak to break. They were the biggest favorite going into the weekend, and honestly, they did not disappoint. One of the more impressive point totals, nearly shutting out Schoolcraft and winning 34-6. Dope commentary on the Maroons' performance here.
Yeah, I mean they just dominated start to finish. Scored off the bat, got turnovers, scored again. They were up 13-0 at half, I believe, and then just scored right out of half. And they looked tough. They looked like they were ready to go, and it was a lot more dominant than their performance against Puamo the previous week. It was just their quarterback he's a heck of a player, plays both ways, and made a lot of plays on defense in the secondary, and also just on offense, throwing the ball, scrambling, and they also had just they ran the ball really, really well. So it's tough to beat a team when you can't stop the run.
Well, congrats to the Maroons breaking a streak and getting that 11-man championship back in the UP and spreading the wealth, right? We've got a lot of champs down, a lot of population down in the lower half of the state, but I like to, I want Doak to do a graphic for our socials that shows the world the locations of all our champs so they could see that we have a one champ up in the UP. And then maybe also that they could see we have a champ in the thumb with Harbor Beach. So, all right. Well, that's our first 2 divisions. Let's go to D6. D6 was Lumen Christi and Kingsley. We had a very tight game coming in. Lumen Christi by 1. I think a lot of people didn't believe that spread. They thought maybe Lumen Christi should have been favored by more. It ended up being that way. Lumen Christi won 28-14. Compared to other games, this is actually our 3rd tightest game. So D8 was our 2nd tightest game. We're going to talk about our tightest game. That was D4. This is our 3rd tightest game, if you can believe it. There weren't a ton of close games. Lumen Christi wins 28-14. They were the favorite all year long. I think they've now won 3 or 4 state titles in a row across D7 and D6. They're on a heck of a run. Doak, commentary on the Lumen Christi Kingsley matchup.
Yeah.
What did you see?
Score of this game definitely is wider than it felt. It was tied up at halftime, and Kingsley honestly had a chance to go up a couple times early in the second half, but turnovers, penalties hurt him, and Lumen Christie ended up scoring. And then Kingsley, I think, fumbled on the ensuing drive in Lumen Christie territory, and then Lumen Christie, um, scored on the next possession. So it really got blown open at the end. But this was a close game. Could have gone either way. Late in the, it was a one-score game late into the second half, and it's just it was a close one, and it was Lumen Christie. I think their experience showed, they didn't flinch, and they just kind of drained the life out of Kingsley. They can run the ball really well, and they're not gonna change up in those moments. So it was impressive by both teams. Honestly, they both had some good crowds as well. So that was a fun game to watch.
Well, I for one, am glad that we had at least a few good games. So there's spoiler alert, as we get into the higher divisions, we're going to go through some bad games, some games that were really never close, along with our Menominee game. Oh, I guess, Menominee was up 13-0.5. That's still relatively close. All right, well, let's do D5. This one certainly fits that trend. It was not that close. West Catholic wins 42-14 over Pontiac Notre Dame Prep. Pontiac Notre Dame Prep was the reigning D5 champ. This was supposed to be our closest game this weekend. It was a pick'em. Notre Dame Prep was a slight favorite to West Catholic. Slight, meaning 0.05 of a point, so not really a favorite. Notre Dame Prep was our favorite in the bracket. They were coming on strong with some impressive wins in the semifinals and regionals by margin of point, or by margin of victory standards. And they kind of they lose by 28 here to West Catholic in a game that I don't think was close for very long. Doak, what's the commentary on this D5 title? Certainly an impressive result from West Catholic.
Yeah, I didn't get to really watch this one because I was traveling, but from what I've heard, early on in the game, the Notre Dame quarterback, who's pretty integral to their offense, got hurt, and I don't think their team was able to recover clearly. And West Catholic dominated from the start. I believe they were up by 3 scores at half, and it just continued on in the second half. So, I mean, West Catholic completed a gauntlet of a schedule. I'm not surprised that they won the game. I think both teams could have, but they went through Catholic Central, Kalamazoo United, Ogemaw Heights, and then Notre Dame. So I'm not jealous of their playoff path, but they got it done, and congrats to the Falcons. They're back on top. I think the last time they won might have been 21 or 22. So
22, I want to say.
Yeah, they're no stranger to this position, but they still got it done, and congrats to them.
Well, congrats to the Falcons. Like Doak said, well deserving. Just a gauntlet of a path. Obviously, the Catholic Central game gets talked about a lot, but then don't sleep on their semifinal they had to overcome. That Ogemaw Heights team was very good, and the game was close late. And then, of course, anytime you beat the defending D5 champ, that is impressive as well. So, a gauntlet. Anyone who won D5 was going to get the gauntlet award. There was just like 6 or 7 teams there that were all rated right next to each other rating wise, and somebody was going to have to string together some victories. So congrats to the Falcons. All right, well, we're halfway through. Let's get to D4. D4 is a special division in a lot of ways. So it was our only one score game, which is incredible. Divine Child wins 23-22. It kind of had a great ending. Doak will get to that here in a second. It's also our biggest upset. Divine Child wins as a 5-point underdog, wins 23-22. Divine Child finishes as champ for the first time ever, Doak? Was it ever, or the first time in 40 years?
40 years. Yeah.
So Divine Child does that. And they also are one of the only champs to not finish the year rated number 1 in their own division. We'll kind of get to that at the end of the show. But all these things, I think I called D4 the shot to hell division a couple weeks ago. It was just wild. It was there a lot of craziness in the bracket. We see that, and congrats to Divine Child. They emerged from the craziness, right? It takes a lot to be the one that ultimately kind of conquers the craziness, and here they are as the champ. So, Doak, tell me about the game. I heard the game was nuts. I heard there were some interesting things.
Yeah.
And it usually finished with just a 1-point victory out of Divine Child.
Yeah, I mean the game could have went either way. It was one of those back and forth games. Unity went up first. Divine Child scored. I think Divine Child scored again, and then Unity scored. So it was just like back and forth the whole game. And then early in the second half, Unity scored a touchdown that got called back for holding, and then they threw a pass on the next play, and it got intercepted. And then they came back. Divine Child came back down the field, scored. Unity came back, tied it up, and then they were down by 1, and instead of going for 2, or they did go for 2, but they faked a field goal, extra point, and it didn't work. And so then they were down by 1, and it was a crazy game. There's a lot of different situational football that could have been played a little differently in a lot of people's eyes, and it was fun to see. Marcello Vitti for Divine Child was one heck of a player. He made a lot of plays on offense, defense, just kind of willed his way to a state title for Divine Child. But a lot of great plays on both sides of the ball for both teams, and it was close. It was really close. They were a couple of yards away from getting the ball back at the end, even so. Unity was, and I don't know. It was an awesome game, and to see the wing T go up against Divine Child ran a little bit more of like a spread type offense that game. They ran the ball a lot too, but they were in some interesting formations as far as they weren't really running power football, and so to just see those clash and that was a lot of fun. And it could have went either way, but congrats to Divine Child for pulling it out for the first time in 40 years. They're back on top.
Well, congrats to Divine Child, and what an awesome game. What a state finals game should be, right? Down to the end, down to the wire, 1-point margin of victory. It's kind of what you hope as a viewer and a fan of the sport. And great story. First time in 40 years. So, all right, let's move on. We got 3 more divisions. Sadly, I don't have a lot of close games left to give you the last 3 divisions. So DeWitt and Mount Pleasant was our D3 game. DeWitt's just been lighting it up. They've been the favorite since we entered the playoffs by a wide margin. I think they were the biggest favorite of all at some point in the year, maybe to start the playoffs. Mount Pleasant, though, I had just got done watching Mount Pleasant in person the week before. They were very impressive, executing on all cylinders, beat a very good little team by a wide margin of victory. I thought they had a really great chance to hang with DeWitt just because of they could score, right? DeWitt's going to score a lot. I thought Mount Pleasant could match them. That was really not the case. DeWitt was up big at one point. The final score was 54-20. DeWitt might have been up by 4 scores to 0 at some point, maybe 5 scores to 0 at one point. I want to say I saw 33-0 maybe. Just kind of a crazy result, and a very impressive offensive performance by the Panthers. Doak, correct me on any of those stats I just threw out if I'm wrong. What did you see with this game?
I'm not too sure what the scores were. I know it was 40-7 at halftime. I mean, just an insanely impressive stat by DeWitt. Their quarterback ran for 397 yards, broke the finals record in this game. I mean, they weren't going to be stopped on offense. They've had a absolutely historic year. I don't know if they had a game this year that was within 3 scores. I mean, besides their semifinal, which was 21 points exactly. They really haven't had a lot of close football games, and a lot of that credit goes to their offense. I mean, they've put over 70 points on a lot of teams, and they're just they were they were a well-oiled machine going into this game, and it's just hard to keep up. I don't know if anybody could have, but credit to Mount Pleasant as well. They had a great year, and they beat some really good football teams over there on the other side of the bracket, and just that's how finals games go sometimes. I guess more often than not this year. They weren't very competitive, but congrats to DeWitt.
Yeah, I had someone tell me, I think a listener told me that DeWitt finished 7th in the nation in scoring this year or something like that. I don't know, Doak, you might have told me that. I don't doubt it. I'm not going to fact check that. We'll just roll with it. DeWitt finished 7th in the nation scoring this year. That's impressive. And then the other thing that this brings up, just this result, is who is the best team in the state, right? Typically, you would give that to an undefeated D1 state champ. Spoiler alert, we have that. There's also a D2 state champ, right? But is DeWitt actually the best team in the state? We actually have an answer to that via our computer model. We'll get to that here at the end. But so keep that in the back of your mind as we're going through this. Is with this result, would you actually take DeWitt as the best team in the state? Certainly, this result leads you to conclude that possibly. So, all right, so that's D3. We got 2 more here, and again, it's going to be similar themes. D2, this was our highest over-under game of the week. We expected a lot of points. Dexter and Orchard Lake St. Mary's. Dexter can score with the best of them. I watched Dexter in person. Very impressive passing attack there. And Orchard Lake St. Mary's, needs almost no introduction. The reigning D2 champ played a gauntlet of a schedule there in the Catholic League top division, and was our favorite going into the bracket and ended up, in the state final game again. And guys, it wasn't really that close. The game itself was not expected to be terribly close. It was a 14-point favorite for the Eaglets over the Dreads. But the game was 51-14. Orchard Lake St. Mary's wins. I was kind of bummed out that this one wasn't closer. I thought there could be some offensive fireworks here, and maybe get into a real shootout. So, Doak, what's your commentary on OLSM beating the Dreads by so much?
Yeah, Orchard Lake just couldn't really be stopped on offense. They had, they were throwing the ball, running the ball, really doing whatever they wanted. Dexter they were moving the ball, made some really cool plays. Their quarterback is a heck of a player, and their receivers are really good as well. And they scored 1 touchdown, and they looked like they might be heating up. And halftime came, and it just really was. Orchard Lake came out hot and just dominated the second half. But Dexter made some cool plays in the first half. They had a kick return and all sorts of stuff. So it wasn't as competitive as I was hoping. I was hoping for a little bit of a shootout, like you were, probably just from the fan perspective. But Orchard Lake, man, they got a heck of a football team over there. That quarterback, they were running them a lot. He was throwing the ball as well. So, and they got some really quick receivers that were hard to cover. And, I think they would have been hard to cover for anybody in any of those finals games. So, congrats to Orchard Lake, back-to-back champs. And yeah.
Well, one thing I do want to add on this, just a shout out to the Dexter community for showing up in droves. There was a lot of shots that circulated of Dexter's crowd at the game. Someone reported 11,000 fans. It certainly seemed that way. It looked like a whole half of the lower bowl at Ford Field was full of Dexter colors. This is Dexter's first time in the championship game, I believe. Dope, you can correct me if I'm wrong there. I think you kind of see that with these larger schools. The first time they break through to the state championship game, they show up in droves. And so credit to the Dreads for filling the stands there. What an impressive environment that was. And so just wanted to give a shout out there. I always love seeing that stuff. So All right. Well, we got one game left. This was the big one. They saved it for the last one, too. It's a Sunday night game. The Shamrocks of Detroit Catholic Central against the Tech Dishes of Detroit Catholic Tech. It's kind of a marquee matchup in terms of history there. Both sides with a plethora of state final appearances and championships. There was a lot of talent on both sides. Both sides were undefeated. It was our number 1 and number 2 team in D1 basically all year since we adjusted Cass Tech's rating. And we expected a close one. We expected Cass Tech to win by 5. Or not Cass Tech to win by 5. DCC to win by 5. And it was not that close. DCC got out to a lead early and held that lead and won 42-19. So 23-point margin of victory there. Dope. Commentary on the game. What anything to add here?
Kind of what you would expect. DCC moved the ball well. They got some really quick receivers in the Gash brothers. They just break the top out the defense, and they did early in the first half. Scored a long pass touchdown, and then Cass Tech was moving the ball as well. I mean, they were running well. 5-6 yards a pop. They couldn't really sustain drives. Kept getting behind the sticks, and that was just too much for them to overcome in the second half. And they were giving up big plays. There was one big man touchdown, pick 6 for DCC. One of their big D linemen scored a touchdown off a pick, so that was cool. But yeah, I mean, DCC once again outperformed the spread. They've been doing it all playoffs. They really got hot at the right time, and they're playing their best football. So I don't know if that's as much of a, I don't know if it was Cass Tech wasn't up to the moment. More so it was probably, DCC was just playing some really good football down the stretch, and it showed again.
Yeah. Hard to say that Cass Tech wasn't up for the moment, given that they had a very impressive state finals victory last year. So, yeah, I kind of lend to believe that DCC is just a very good team. And that certainly reflects in the results, in the playoffs. So, all right, well that's your game by game review, guys. If you want to learn more, you can always check out the in-game stats and read the write-ups on MHSA.com. Those are very good. MHSA does a great job with that, so you can check that out. Just to kind of put a bow on it, a few things here before we jump into our final segment, which is how the ratings finished. Favorites tracker. So at the start of the playoffs, we said, hey, this is who the computer model likes in all 8 divisions based on ratings and based on draw, right? And in that favorites tracker, we called Cass Tech as a champ in D1. In D2 was Orchard Lake. In D3 was DeWitt. In D4 was Harper Woods. In D5, Notre Dame Prep. D6 was Lumen Christi. D7 was Menominee. And D8 was Hudson. So I just went through those. To those who can't keep all these things in their head at once, we picked 2 right, 3 right, 6 right, and 7 right at the start of the playoffs. And I told you we would probably get 3 right. I think the number was 2.9. We ended up getting 4 right. So a little bit better year for the favorites. Our favorite at the start of the playoffs won in 4 divisions, and that's across a 5-round bracket. So pretty impressive job by the computer model there. I'm saddened by it, even though, we run the numbers for the computer model. I always am in favor of parity. And so I'm always saddened when things go chalk like that and you don't see any crazy upsets. So that's I just wanted to say that. Another thing I wanted to shout out was the Catholic League really dominated. Catholic League Central gets 2 champs, the D1 and D2 champs, DCC and OLSM. And then the Catholic League AA, which is the tier below, gets 2 champs as well. Divine Child in D4 and Lumen Christi in D6. So very impressive results there for the Catholic League, certainly making the case for the state's strongest league top to bottom. So those are 2 things I wanted to note. Now we're going to get into a new segment, which is just something you got to do in week 14. You got to say, okay, we had 8 champs. How does a computer rate them? And so let's get into that right now. So I'm going to go. We ran the ratings here for our 8 champs, and we'll kind of rate them top to bottom. And so We'll start at the bottom. So our lowest rated state champ, our three lowest rated state champs are all right next to each other. Menominee, Lumen Christi, and Harbor Beach all have right around the same rating. I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by that. They might be surprised by the order, but to say that 6, 7, and 8, the D8, D7, and D6 state champs are your three lowest rated state champs, those are your smallest schools, kind of makes sense. But we would actually favor Harbor Beach over Lumen Christi and Menominee by about a point. The spread between Lumen Christi and Menominee would be basically a pick 'em. And those who are avid fans would remember the very good finals game between Lumen Christi and Menominee a couple years ago, I believe. And so those are kind of your three lowest rated teams in that bucket of our 8 state champs. Next, we've got West Catholic and Divine Child. West Catholic has a slight edge over Divine Child. They're a 1.5 favorite over Divine Child if they played today. And so that's your D4 and D5. Again, not really a lot of surprises. That D4 and D5 are neck and neck there in the middle. I don't think anyone would be surprised by that. Our final set of ratings, D1, D2, and D3. Those are your top 3 teams. In what order are they? It goes exactly chalk. So really no surprises according to the computer model. DCC is your number 1 rated team of your 8 state champs. They would be a 6-point favorite, 6.5-point favorite over OLSM if they played today. I believe they beat the Eaglets in the regular season by 2 touchdowns. Is that right, Doak?
Correct.
So that one kind of lines up. Maybe the next game they would play would be a little closer, is what the computer is saying. What everyone wants to know is how would DeWitt stack up against these teams? They did not play the Catholic League Central this year. The computer model has DeWitt losing by 10 to DCC, if you can believe that. I don't really believe that spread after watching what DeWitt did to a very good Mount Pleasant team. That's what the computer model would say. And DeWitt losing by 4 to OLSM. And so that is how we'd rate the state champs. DCC, OLSM, DeWitt, West Catholic, Divine Child, Harbor Beach, Lumen Christi, Menominee. It almost lines up straight with how the enrollments of everyone tracks. The spread between DCC and Menominee would be 34 points, is what we would say. So that's what I got on the ratings. Doak, what's your reactions to that?
No surprises really. I mean, that Harbor Beach team's been rated really highly all year, and I mean they, proved the model right. They won a state title pretty dominantly. I don't know if I believe that DCC DeWitt spread either. At the same time, they don't have a lot of common opponents, so it's hard to really judge accurately. DCC looked really, really good. Same with OLSM. I would love to see DeWitt play one of those teams just to get a better grip on things. But another point is DCC with the 67 or 68.7 rating is absolutely bonkers. I don't know if we've had a rating that high ever from the computer model. It would be hard to say, but that is some dominant dominant football. They have a heck of a defensive rating and offensive rating too, but wow, DCC looks to be one of the better rated teams in the model's history. So
yeah, that's an interesting point on the ratings there. So one of the things we can do, we don't talk about this a lot, but we can split this rating by offense and defensive components. And so if you do offense, actually the state's top offense is DeWitt of these 8 champs. Their offensive rating is higher than DCC's and Orchard Lake St. Mary's by about 3 points. And if you look at defense, the state's top defense is actually DCC and Orchard Lake St. Mary's. So that's impressive. Impressive out of DCC to have such a high defensive rating. So, all right. Well, one other thing I want to look at here before we kind of wrap is just the final ratings across everybody. And we're going to do a show next week on most improved teams. So we'll do that. Everybody seems to always like that content. But one thing I do want to look at is just how the ratings finished across everybody. writ large. So this is what we're looking at here on my screen is the final ratings for every 11-man team. And we're not sorting by division. We're just looking at overall. So this is like Doak's graphic he's been putting out called the Super 25. It's the same kind of thing. And so your number one and number two teams, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised by. DCC and Orchard Lake St. Mary's are your number one and number two teams in the state. We just told you the spread on that game. They are D1 and D2 state champs. Cass Tech is your number 3 rated team in the state. They did not play Orchard Lake St. Mary's this year, or at least I don't think they did. They would be a 2-point underdog to OLSM. And if they replayed the DCC title game, they would be I think that's 9-point underdog, not 8.5-point underdog to the Shamrocks this time. So that spread has widened after this most recent result. Number 4 is DeWitt. They would be an underdog to Cass Tech, a 2-point dog to Cass Tech if they played. So those are your top 4 teams. 3 of them are state champs. All 4 of them were in the finals. After this is where it gets interesting and really top heavy with your D1. There's some great teams that had to exit early just because D1's so top heavy. Clarkston is team 5, East Kentwood team 6, Hudsonville 7, Rockford 8. Those are your top 8 teams. Half of them are in D1, and 9 and 10 are also D1 teams. Saline and Grand Blanc. That's your top 10. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So we start to see some other divisions in 11 through 20. 11 is Portage Central. You remember, they had a great run this year. They were the number 2 team in D2. They finished the year as the number 2 team in D2. They had to bow out in the semis against OLSM. Muskegon bowed out quite early this year. They got upset by TCC. We still rate them as the 3rd best team in D2. Only a 3-point dog to number 2 Portage Central. That is your team. We're now on team 12. Team 13 is where Adams comes in. They're a D1 team. They were there. They were hanging around. They were in the semis. Lost to Cass Tech. Team 14 is King. They actually finished the year as your 2nd best D3 team. They were upset, according to the computer model, by Warrendale LaSalle in the regional finals. Is that right, Doak?
Correct.
So the computer's actually saying, hey, they were the closest to DeWitt. That's what we were telling you, all playoffs until kind of things shook out like they did in the regional finals. So we're the computer models awarded them as the 2nd best team in D3. A team we did not get to talk about a whole lot is Midland Dow. They are down here at team 15. What's interesting is I believe Midland Dow played Mount Pleasant, the D2 runner or D3 runner-up in the season and lost. The computer model finishes the year rating them higher than the Mount Pleasant team they lost to. They are team 15. We didn't talk about them a whole lot, but they are the D2, the 4th best team in D2 is what the computer's saying. We get our first D4 team in Harper Woods. Harper Woods was upset by Divine Child. We talked about that at length in an episode, a couple episodes back when that upset happened. The computer model still rates them as the best team in D4. They obviously did not make the finals. They did not make the semifinals. They're your first. They are your first D4 team to be rated at team 16. Dexter at 17, D2 team, D2 runner-up. Another couple of D1s in Romeo and Davison brings us to 19 teams. Mount Pleasant is team 20. They're your D3 runner-up. They would be a 3-point dog to Martin Luther King if that matchup ever happened. It won't, but it's just kind of interesting. This is where we start to get into the D4 teams. So, and I'm only going to give you 5 more because we don't need to go through all 500 teams. Unity Christian, your D4 runner-up, is still favorited by the computer model over Divide Child. Isn't that interesting? They are team 21. Ludington, who bowed out in the first round, got upset by a good Big Rapids team, is still your 3rd best D4 team. They're a point underdog to Unity Christian, and if they played Divine Child, the model would favor them by 3, maybe 3.5. And so they are team 22. West Bloomfield is team 23. Howell, team 24. And your final your team in your Power 25 here is a Catholic League Central team. Actually owns one of the state's only victories over Orchard Lake St. Mary's in upset fashion. Brother Rice at Team 25 in D2. That's your Super 25. That's how it ends this year. I'm sure Doak will put that out this week. Just kind of interesting there. Interesting that we just went through it. And of those Power 25, only 3 were state champs. Only 3. We did not see our D5 state champ. They're just narrowly edged out. They're Team 27. And we did not see our D4 state champ. We went through some D4 teams. Divine Child, like I said, they were kind of the biggest dark horse to win. They finish as looks like the 5th highest rated D4 team. The champ in D4 is the 5th highest rated team. So congrats to them. Really the only team to do something like that this year, because all the other kind of champs were the top rated team essentially. So anyways, that's all I got. Doak, any commentary on that? That was kind of a weird segment. We don't do that often, but I just wanted to go through that.
No, I don't got much. I mean, not too surprised. A lot of, obviously it's top heavy with the higher divisions, and it's interesting to me that some teams like, Ludington and whatnot can be so highly rated, and lose in the first round. And, I know it's just the model. But it's interesting to see, to think about if those brackets were created a little differently. And you had different matchups in the first round and the second round, maybe to try and set things up better for the higher rated teams, how that would have looked in the later rounds. And I know that is, probably never going to happen with the MHSA brackets and all the, geographic districting, but it's just interesting to think about, maybe if they seeded the brackets a little differently, what it could have looked like, who could have been playing where and how much later they would have been playing, or how much, earlier they would have bowed out of the playoffs. But, always fun to think about. Doesn't really matter at the end of the day. The teams who beat the 5 teams that were put in front of them are state champs, and congrats to those teams. And yeah, can't wait for next year already. We got, we're not done with our analysis yet, but just excited.
Yeah, it is interesting. And Doak, just to push back a little bit on what you just said, I don't know if the bracket seeding would have changed anything. According to the computer model, we finish with the number 1 rated team as the champ in 7 of 8 divisions. So our favorite, according to the bracket, 1 in 4 divisions. Our favorite in terms of the best team, which remember, these are different things because the brackets are not seeded according to the Goosepoop computer model. The best team won it in 7 of 8 divisions. The highest rated team. Isn't that crazy? I don't think we've ever seen that happen. And so just incredible result for incredible year, not for parity, for anti-parity. Incredible year for favorites. So, and then really, congrats to Divine Child for pull it off what they did, because they're the only division to do it. So, all right. Well, that's sort of the show, guys. 2 quick segments. 1, if you are a coach and you're watching this, save the date for our Goosepoop 7-on-7. It'll be the 3rd annual one. It's coming up July 23rd. We'll get you at least 4 games. It's a tournament style. We had 3 champs last year across 3 divisions. We seed the divisions by enrollment, so you're playing appropriate teams. The games are fully reffed. We had 40 teams last year, 42, I want to say. It was a lot of fun. It's one day. It's quick. The games are bang, 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 9 to 3:30. I'll have more information on how to reserve your spot at a later show. But for now, just remember, July 23rd. It's at Chelsea High School over on the east side of the state. And it's a really fun event. We've been doing it the last 2 years. I'm really looking forward to it, and we'll see who all comes this year. So that is July 23rd. And then the other thing is mailbag. We had a mailbag question this week. Where does the name for Goosepoop come from? And that's actually a fun one. So when I was first developing the Playoff Wizard, right, that was the first thing we ever did. It's our app where you project whether your team's going to make the playoffs. Many of you guys have used it. I didn't know what to call it. I had a couple different a couple different ideas. It's really like hard to name a just name a blog, essentially, is what it was. And I was inspired a lot in making it by Snooze to You. And I think I remember reading that Snooze had named his after his childhood nickname or his high school nickname. And so I just went the same route. My dad, who's a high school football coach in the state, has always called me Goose or Goosepoop, because I used to, chase geese around when I was a little kid. We lived on a lake. And so I just said, hey, look, I don't know what else to call it. Let's call it Goosepoop. At the very least, people will remember it. And that's how we ended up with Goosepoop, guys. That's the story. I wish, it's not anything better than that. So that is why Goose is Goosepoop. It was inspired by my dad. My dad inspired by love for high school football. So that is mailbag question, guys. If you have anything you heard on today's show and you want it clarified, you want to go through something more in the weeds, put it in the comments. Send us a DM on Twitter. We're happy to go through it. That's what the podcast is for, and I'm sure other people would love to hear it too. So mailbag's always open. Dope, that's all I got for today's show. Anything out of you?
Yeah, I'd just say, second what Cannon said, if you guys want to see anything or see some sort of analysis, let us know. Leave it in the comments. Send us a DM on one of our socials. That is exactly what the podcast is for. And any sort of, long form video content you want to see, some sort of YouTube video about high school football in Michigan, data involved or not, whatever you're interested in, just leave it in the comments and we'll see if we can make it work. We're excited. We want to keep this rolling. We really like high school football, and just because it's not the season anymore doesn't mean we can't keep some stuff coming towards you guys. At least moderately consistently. We're trying to keep it rolling, and we always think about football, so it's always the season for us. But just let us know. Leave it in the comments or something like that, and then make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos when we do drop them. And just thank you guys for doing this. We're 11 episodes in, and we've had a ton of fun. We got a nice little crew with us listening, so thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks guys for listening along. I have no idea where this goes. We've got one more episode this year. We're going to do the most improved next week. Everybody seems to like that. We'll probably tune off for a bit. We'll come back to you for division changes in March, and then we'll probably boot up again in August at the very least to do strength of schedule analyses and that sort of thing. No idea where this goes. We're going to obviously continue to do it, but it's been very refreshing to interact with you guys in this format every week, and to just see your guys' support. We did think we'd have, probably 300 listeners tuning in every week, 400 listeners tuning in every week, and so it's been fun. So thanks for tuning in. Certainly the highlight of my week every week. So, all right. Well, with that, we're going to part. Goose and Doke are out. Peace.
See you guys.